trafficked from South America into the United States. So that's the goal. Traditionally, we've done this through law enforcement actions. The Coast Guard does this, sometimes in support with the Navy. Like the Navy can conduct some operations with Coast Guard people on board because they're law enforcement. What the administration is doing, they have tried to explain to us how designating these groups as terrorist organizations allows us to just go and conduct kinetic strikes and kill them. I don't think I've seen anything like this. Well, I know I haven't in my lifetime. I spent 25 years in the United States Navy. For us to make a decision that something is clearly a law enforcement action, that the U.S. military is making a decision to just eliminate these people. We should arrest them. They should have an opportunity to defend themselves in court, and we should prosecute them to the fullest extent of the law. When they released those two guys after the kinetic strike, the two survivors, what does that say? Either they weren't trafficking drugs, or maybe they didn't feel like they had the legal authority to do that strike and decided to repatriate them back to the country. So,
well, there's a third option too, right? Which is they detain them and then somehow
that would be the logical.
But then somehow those two detainees release some sort of information that is not what the administration wants out there in the public, right?
The administration costs a lot of money, for us to do this. So our history with regime change is not good.
Right.
The administration, has said they would like to see somebody else, running Venezuela. I would too. I just don't think this is the way you do it. And covert CIA operations as well, forcing it on a country it's not making us more safe.
But is that your sense of what they are trying to facilitate, or is it something a little bit different? Like, for instance, access to oil, or I don't know.
They're a huge exporter of oil. They've got incredible energy reserves, but the administration hasn't said that. They've talked about they've mentioned, the regime change part of this, which I just think is very short-sighted. You can't predict how these things are going to go.
Yeah.
And should we really be in the business of, starting wars to kick out leadership we don't like? I'd love to see Maduro go. Sending the Ford Battle Group to the Caribbean and flying B-52s and B-1Bs up and down the coast, with the idea that at some point we might invade or start doing some kinetic strikes on land. That's an escalation that I think just takes us in the wrong direction.
So you are outspoken about this on the Republican side. Rand Paul's been extremely outspoken on this, taking a lot of arrows, in fact, from the administration over that. What is the actual likely role, if any, that Congress, assuming that the government reopens, will play in trying to at least put some guardrails on this, or manage it, or authorize it? What do you see the role here for the Senate and for the Congress?
Well, we should have a vote on any kind of hostile activities we take against countries, especially when they go on for an extended period of time.
Should have a vote is different than will have a vote, obviously.
That's right. And we won't have a vote. I don't think we'll have a vote. We could try to force a vote, like go unanimous consent on the floor, goofy Washington, stuff like this, which is kind of a vote. We won't have one because the Republicans will not stand up to this president. They just won't. Rand Paul is a, recent example, but he's on an island all by himself right now with regards to Venezuela. And many of my Republican colleagues, they lost their backbones in January of this year.
Yeah. I want to switch to domestic stuff. The news last night that broke was that the administration is replacing a number of ICE field officers with Border Patrol agents. The sort of Cliff's Notes version of it is that this actually is likely to ramp up the type of activities that we've seen that have gone viral, confrontations in schools, around churches, Home Depots, things like that. One of the cities where the field officer has been replaced is reportedly Phoenix, which is in your state of Arizona. I'm curious both for your thoughts on what's happening here and if you've gotten any explanation from the administration about what's to come in Phoenix.
Well, I will say, ICE is rather unpopular now, right? In a lot of different areas. I have good relationships with the ICE guys in the leadership in Phoenix and Tucson and Arizona, and have worked with them. The problem with this is you're now going to turn over a complicated operation to somebody who isn't trained to do this.
Mm-hmm.
ICE's operation is not being transparent with the public. I know I can say this based on what I've been briefed, not being completely transparent, and is trying to skirt the law on this.
I know you can't get into what you've been briefed, but when you say they're not being transparent, can you speak in generalities about what they're not?
Sure.
Releasing?
So, yeah, those routes from Venezuela to Caribbean islands are used to traffic cocaine, typically.
Okay.
I think the American people understand where most of the fentanyl comes from. The precursors come from China, sometimes into the U.S. and down into Mexico, and fentanyl pills come through the border.
Right.
Sometimes they come, through on boats, but that's often in the Eastern Pacific, off the west coast of Mexico, not through the Caribbean. It's not what we've seen typically. So what they're doing, it's also not fair to the members of the military that have to do this,
right?
That have to pull the trigger. I've sunk 2 ships in my career during the first Gulf War as part of my 39 combat missions. I sunk a OSA-2 missile patrol boat in Kuwait Harbor. I sunk a Polnokny troop carrier.